Pituitary hyperplasia from primary hypothyroidism. Introduction. Pituitary hyperplasia is a relatively common condition that occurs in both physiological and pathological states. Pregnancy is the most common condition associated with physiological pituitary enlargement. Also, is commonly present but remains largely undiagnostic in hypothyroidism primary. Primary hypothyroidism occurs when the thyroid is being stimulated properly. However, it isn't able to produce enough thyroid hormone for the body to function properly.
Hyper refers to having too much, and thyroid refers to thyroid hormone. So hyperthyroidism refers to a condition where there's excess thyroid hormones. The condition is also called thyrotoxicosis and is generally due to an overproduction from the thyroid gland. Normally, the hypothalamus, which is located at the base of the brain, detects low blood levels of thyroid hormones and releases thyrotropin-releasing hormone into the hypophyseal portal system, which is a network of capillaries linking the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary then releases thyroid-stimulating hormone, also called thyrotropin, or simply TSH. TSH stimulates the thyroid gland, which is a gland located in the neck that looks like two thumbs hooked together in the shape of a V. The thyroid gland is made up of thousands of follicles, which are small spheres lined with follicular cells. Follicular cells convert thyroglobulin, a protein found in follicles, into two iodine-containing hormones, triiodothyronine, or T3, and thyroxine, or T4.
Applications in medicine. Profound and severe primary hypothyroidism was first recognized from the autopsy of a cretin. Pituitary enlargement, secondary to primary hypothyroidism, was first reported by Nips in 1851 and found to produce no symptoms in patients unless there was a compression of the chiasma optic. Pituitary hyperplasia secondary to hypothyroidism can present in various forms. First, silent feature of hypothyroidism. Second, amenorrhea and galactorrhea. And finally, neurological and visual presentation. Autopsy studies in patients with primary hypothyroidism have found nodular thyrotrophic cells hyperplasia in 69% and of glands. Hypothyroidism symptoms are hair loss, apathy, lethargy, muscle aches, anorexia, intolerance to cold, and facial edema.
Maybe you've heard of the pituitary gland. This gland is part of your brain and is located in the middle of your head, just behind your nose. Exactly, right there. But what does it do? Well, it makes sure that loads of organs in your body do their jobs properly. Like the liver, for example, which produces something that makes your bones and muscles grow. The gonads, which produce sex hormones, that make sure that women get breasts and later on can have children, and men can grow a nice beard. The kidneys, which ensure that you go to the bathroom often enough. The adrenal gland, which produce the stress hormones that make sure your body has enough energy and you feel good. And finally, the thyroid, which makes the thyroid hormones that make sure you don't get cold or become tired and slow. As you can see, very important organs. Well, the pituitary gland puts them to work by sending out signals. Once he notices an organ is doing the job properly, for example, the adrenal gland, he sends less signals. And if the organ needs a little more, he of course sends more. Pretty cool, right? That's how the pituitary gland keeps all those important organs in check. Nice!
The advantage is that it is easily reversible with thyroid hormone replacement therapy and corrected the amenorrhea and galactorrhea syndrome along with the regression of the pituitary tumor over 8 months. The cons are that they are often diagnosed late with the tumor when the tumor have increased in size and cause local compression. Only 38% with a chief complaint subjective of hypothyroidism on initial presentation.
Welcome to 2-Minute Neuroscience, where I simplistically explain neuroscience topics in 2 minutes or less. In this installment, I will discuss the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. The hypothalamus is a small region situated directly above the brainstem. It is made up of a collection of nuclei with a variety of functions, but in general, the hypothalamus is involved in controlling the two H's, homeostasis and hormones. Homeostasis is a term used to describe the maintenance of balance or stability in a biological system. The hypothalamus can maintain homeostasis either by exerting direct influence over the autonomic nervous system or by causing the release of hormones. The hypothalamus manipulates hormone release primarily by controlling the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is a hormone-secreting gland that sits just below the hypothalamus. It is sometimes called the master gland because it not only secretes many extremely important hormones, but it also regulates the activity of other hormone-secreting glands throughout the body. The pituitary gland consists of two lobes, called the anterior and the posterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary is responsible for the release of a number of hormones that have widespread effects throughout the body. They include growth hormone, which is involved with growth, follicle-stimulating hormone, which plays a role in development and reproduction, luteinizing hormone, which is essential to testosterone production and reproduction, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is involved with the stress and fear responses, thyroid-stimulating hormone, which is important to healthy metabolism, and prolactin, which promotes milk production in females. The release of these hormones is controlled by the hypothalamus, which sends signals in the form of releasing hormones to tell the anterior pituitary when to secrete its hormones. The posterior pituitary also secretes two hormones, but does not synthesize them. Instead, they are synthesized by the hypothalamus and then sent to the posterior pituitary for release into the bloodstream. The names of these hormones are oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin has important roles in facilitating childbirth and lactation, but is also thought to have a role in compassion and social bonding. Vasopressin's main functions are to control urine output and regulate blood pressure.
In Ecuador, the incidence of pituitary hyperplasia in primary hypothyroidism has not been clearly identified, but recent literature suggests that it may be more common than previously accepted. Also has a high prevalence of hypothyroidism.
The most common pituitary disease is indeed pituitary tumors. And it turns out that about 1 in 10 people in the population have a small pituitary tumor. And these are called incidentalomas because usually they're found by accident. So if somebody comes in and needs a head scan because they're having a headache, or maybe they had a motor vehicle accident, and you find a tiny tumor in the pituitary. Most of these tumors are clinically insignificant. They do not produce hormone, nor do they knock out hormone production. The tumors that we worry about in the pituitary gland are tumors that actually overproduce hormone, and those include tumors that produce prolactin, known as prolactinomas, which are classically the only hormone-producing tumor that can be treated with medication alone. The other hormone-producing tumors, including growth hormone-producing tumors causing acromegaly and ACTH-producing tumors causing Cushing's syndromes, are treated surgically initially. They may require further treatment down the road, but the treatment of choice is surgery. In addition, the size of the tumor is critically important. Tumors that are less than a centimeter in size, unless they are producing hormone, can typically be followed and monitored.
In conclusion, the incidence of pituitary hyperplasia in primary hypothyroidism has not been clearly identified, but recent literature suggests that it may be more common than previously accepted. Also, it's very important to know that hypothyroidism is a risk factor of hyperplasia to have a better and faster diagnosis.
I love running, and I always did, and all of a sudden it became really, really hard to run 1 mile. I went to my physician for an annual checkup. He decided to run a special check that he doesn't usually do every year. And when the results came back, he said, "You don't have any hormones in your body. It's absolutely zero." And he said that could be an indication of only one thing. It's probably something in the head. He said maybe it's the pituitary gland, but I'm not sure. Why don't you do an MRI? When the MRI results came back, he called me and he said, "Listen, it's bad. It's not only do you have a tumor," he said, "what you have in centimeters I've never seen in my life as a doctor in millimeters."
TSH secreting tumors are very rare. They represent less than 1% of all pituitary tumors. And usually when a patient has a damage to the pituitary gland no longer stimulates the thyroid to make thyroid hormones if the tumor is large. In his case, his thyroid hormone level was elevated, but his TSH level, which is normally low in patients who have overactive thyroid, was actually elevated. So the two tests didn't quite make sense with each other, except by the possibility of him having this very rare form of pituitary tumor.
One of the things that I discovered when I went to Johns Hopkins was that I was losing sight on my left eye, and I didn't even know that. I was losing the peripheral vision on my left eye.
Because he had a compression of his optic nerves, he had already some vision damage, and therefore we couldn't wait for a medication to try to shrink the tumor, but we had to act fast to decompress his optic nerve and recover his vision.
Finding out that you have a brain tumor is horrible. Is a horrible moment. You feel like your life collapsed and you feel like it's the end, but it's not. The recovery was very speedy, was very, very quick. After 2 weeks, I was already working, went back to running. I'm training again, I'm running again. I think that in the whole scope of being extremely unlucky and getting a brain tumor, I was 100% lucky. I was lucky with the people around me, and I was lucky with the team at Johns Hopkins, and I was lucky to be able to get my life back.